Hi everyone, so today I'll be talking about reasons why you should take a solo trip and personal advice that I have as a person who's taking multiple solo trips, and hopefully to convince you slash influence you to take your first ever solo trip. But I'm so happy you're here and have clicked on my channel. So no matter, I was wanting to say 2024 is the year for you to travel, but it can honestly be any year. So if you're watching this, this is your year to start solo traveling. And I'm gonna be looking down a couple times on my tablet because I do not have the greatest memory. So, and just to save us all time. Okay, so yeah, I'm here to convince you why you should solo travel, and I will explain my reasoning and hopefully you can resonate with it. So for me, obviously I'm in my 20s. Everyone in their 20s has a lot of things going on, whether that's going to maybe college, grad school, having children, getting married. Just everyone's on a different timeline. So for me, I felt like it was very difficult to plan trips with my friends, and you also don't know everyone's financial situation. And say if you actually plan a trip with your friends and you plan it out, but it doesn't make it out the group chat, which is so frustrating as a person that's a type A friend, or type A planner. I just like, it's just a lot of time wasted. It really just does suck being disappointed with, not having people to go experience these things. And it really was just that I was like, I'm not gonna wait on anyone, it's my life. Like, and I really felt like moving to Houston by myself was like something that I did 2022, and I was like, I need something that steps up a little bit above that. So I felt like solo traveling was like what would be the next step for me. And I'm really glad I did. But that was one reason why, and also because whenever you're traveling with friends, it just sucks to plan everything out, take the time and travel and have a shitty trip. Because I've learned, I haven't had shitty trips with friends, but I know that there's friends in my friend circle that have been verbal about having trips and them not really being happy with them because of the people that they went. And that really is just sucks, because it's like, damn, like my money is wasted, my time is wasted, and it's just like I'm not in the mood. And it should be like the time that you're supposed to be happy because you're on vacation and enjoying yourself, but you're just stuck with people that, first of all, you don't know what they want to do, they're not vocal about it, or they're not really good at communicating with you about how they feel, or maybe they just want to stay in the hotel the whole time, but you're the type of person that wants to go out and explore, and y'all aren't on the same page. So that just really sucks. Or they just might have a negative attitude. There's some small reasons that really just made me really jump to solo traveling. I feel like those were valid enough reasons for me. And also, one more. First of all, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I don't have pets, I don't have kids, I don't have like any like huge debt that I have to be like, oh my god, I can't travel. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make it happen, because where there's a will, there's a way. So if I can do it, I'm sure a lot of people can. And also to prove myself wrong, that traveling doesn't have to be this luxurious, unattainable thing that I couldn't do. Because growing up, I honestly, my family didn't really have a lot of money, and I just remember growing up in this belief that it's like, oh, like rich people can only do it. But that's completely false, because there's so many ways that traveling can be non-expensive. And that's something that I'll actually cover in this video, of how I was able to achieve that, because I honestly feel that money is so useful, and it could be used whether you want to you could enhance your experiences when it comes to traveling, and it's really on you, on what you want to have more comfort in. And that kind of, one example of that is like, say you don't really care to invest in like a great airline or airplane experience. So an example would be like Spirit Airlines, and they're known to have very cheap flights, but maybe the experience won't be well. But you're really the type of person that's like, oh no, I have to have a good airline, then you might not choose Spirit. And or maybe even hotel rooms, like hotels, you could choose like really luxurious hotels or very like cheap hotels, Airbnbs, or even hostels, which is something that I did. And as a person, if you're watching this and you're solo traveling, I definitely highly recommend that you should at least give it a try, staying in hostels, because they're literally the best thing for solo travelers. And if you also want to meet people, it's so easy to meet people through hostels. The reason was because I generally found myself being very sad and crying every day. And I remember thinking, I was like, why am I so sad? Like, I'm too young to be feeling this sad, and I don't have like any huge responsibilities like a kid. So I was like, I'm gonna be okay. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna start traveling, and I don't need to be on anyone's timeline or ask anyone. I'm just gonna do it. And I'm really glad I did, because I feel like traveling really helps you fall back in love with life. And I'm not even sugarcoating shit. Like, I love like things that I do. I love my friends. I love Houston, and it's so great. But traveling just gives you this experience of just kind of really just falling back in love with life. It's just so refreshing, and I feel that if you were able to do it, then just do it. So for me, I've actually gone to Guatemala. That was my first ever solo trip. Originally it was supposed to be Colombia, but yeah, I was like, I'm booking it. And Guatemala was so cheap. It was very, like, my flight was not that expensive. I think it was 130 or 120, one of those. Less than 150 for a round trip. And to Colombia, it was like around 500. So yeah, but honestly, I'm so happy I went to Guatemala and Colombia, because I fell in love. Guatemala was great, but Colombia, oh my god, I love that place. Like, I literally cried when I was in Colombia because I did not want to leave. I was able to visit Cartagena and then Medellin. And in Medellin, I just thought that city was so beautiful, and I met so many amazing people, and got to know so much history about Colombia, and see art museums, and try different foods, and dance, and learn salsa there. Well, I already kind of know salsa, but just get better at salsa. I know it's so amazing. And in Guatemala, the reason why I went to Guatemala was because I wanted to hike a volcano. So I did that, knowing damn well that I'm not an avid hiker at all. Like, Houston is pretty flat, and I've never really hiked like that. But a couple months leading up to me going to Guatemala, I definitely started running more and just increasing my cardio to help me prep for that hike. And it was, I believe, an overnight hike. We started in the morning around 6 a.m. and then we got back the next day, I believe, in the afternoon. It was very brutal, but definitely worth it. I met so many cool people during that hike. People from Germany, like girls from Germany, people from also Texas, all the way from London, and what else, Canada, and South America. So it was really great. They're both really great countries to visit, and I definitely recommend going to South and Central America. It's so beautiful. I personally really love tropical areas where you could have the best of both worlds. In both areas, I felt like it was pretty safe to party and relax. In Guatemala, I flew into Guatemala City, and then I stayed in Antigua, and then I was there for a couple days, and then I think I spent 3 or 4 days in Lake Atitlan. And Lake Atitlan was so beautiful. It was so nice being there. And my Guatemala trip was about a week long, and in Colombia was about 10 days. And I genuinely feel like that's more than enough for me as a beginner that started. I was like, well, I'm not really gonna dive into 6 months of traveling or a year of backpacking. I will start off little, because I'm very much a person that likes routine and my own space and a little bit of structure. When it comes to solo traveling, there's not really much of that. It's more of like, oh, let's see what the day has for me. And yeah, so it was definitely a learning experience. Of course, as a woman, a young woman, I definitely had hella fears. I had so many fears. So if you're watching this, you're spiraling, it's completely understandable. Trust me, the day before I left to my first solo trip in Guatemala, I was spiraling. I don't think I got to sleep that night. And one tip I will say is to let your close friends know. I told like my parents maybe like couple days before I was leaving to my first solo trip, and I let know like really close friends or people that I knew like here in Houston, that my location shared with them, and they knew that I was gonna be in Guatemala. I didn't really tell a lot of people, just because for me personally, the way I thought about it was, I already know like deep down that I'm fucking scared. Like, I didn't know what was gonna happen that trip. Like, I really knew if I let myself spiral, it was not gonna be a good thing. But I knew if I told other people, and I knew I know people just have opinions and I just didn't want to hear them. I didn't want to hear like their thoughts about them. I didn't want to hear what their fears were, their concerns, any of that. So I was like, I'm really just telling like maybe 3 or 4 people max about them. And I generally feel like you should tell people that are going to be supportive, but also caring and wanting to express their concerns in a safe way, not more of like projecting their insecurities and projecting their fears onto you, because no one really wants to hear that. It's like whenever you get a big tattoo and your tattoo art, you're like really excited, but then your tattoo artist says, oh, this is gonna hurt, it took me 2 days to complete this, like it was so painful, it's gonna hurt so much. It's like nobody wants to hear that. Why would you tell me that? And I know that firsthand experience because it happened to me, and I remember I was gonna be like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna get this tattoo. But thankfully I had a friend at that time that like was like, no girl, you already paid it, you're gonna get your tattoo. And you want those people like that when it comes to you taking this big jump, that are gonna be like, yes, like I'm rooting for you. Do your research, whether that's through social media like TikTok's really great, and YouTube. What I watched through YouTube was a lot of like girls trip. Usually it's like women that make those content where, or like birthday trips, or even look up solo trips where like to those countries, wherever you're solo traveling to, and see what they did and what's popular to do there, and make a list of maybe things you want to do. I remember in Guatemala I made a list of places that I want to visit. I can tell you that I probably didn't even visit any of them, and I was fine because the places that I stumbled upon, I was like in love with them. So it's totally fine. And you going by yourself, you don't have to be upset anyone, because you could possibly go with a friend and they could probably be very vocal about them being upset that they didn't get to do this. But when you go by yourself, there's no one to be upset at. So, and yeah, I would say make a list of places and things you want to see and visit, foods you want to try. At least have like somewhat a plan. I will say, even if you don't have a plan, it's you by yourself, so you'll find whatever to do. And yeah, so definitely do that before you travel. Make sure to have a story in mind wherever you're traveling to. Have your story that people might ask you about, because people are very talkative. I know I'm definitely a chatter and I love interacting with people, and you also you just to be safe, you never know. People might appear to be really great people, wholesome people, but you also never know. So for me personally, whenever I went to Guatemala, I had the story made up in my mind whenever someone would ask me like, oh, like how come you're visiting Guatemala? And on my flight, I was next to an elderly couple, which were so lovely, and they definitely did not give off a malicious intent whenever they were asking me, oh, why are you visiting? That's just something very common people ask. But obviously, just to be safe, you just want to have a story made up, because some people can't lie on the spot. Maybe you can, go you. But for me, what I had said was, oh, I'm visiting my brother that works here in Guatemala, and in Guatemala City, he works in one of the hotel places. He's a manager, and I'm planning to meet up with him. And that was that. Like, at least have something to say. That's one example. And I remember when I was in Colombia, I think it was the second day in Cartagena, I decided to do a boat tour, which was like island hopping, and I was literally the only woman there, and by myself, because there was like a couple, and then like I think it was like a woman, but she was like clearly with her man, and I was like the only one. And I remember like already kind of having a story in mind, and I bonded with 2 of the guys there, and they were like, oh, so how come you're visiting Cartagena, or like you're the only one on this like boat tour? And I was like, oh yeah, like, well, for this I am alone, but like my friends are back in the hotel room because they got food poisoning. I'm vegetarian, and I think it's something from the meat that they ate. And I mean, the vegetarian part isn't a lie, but it comes in handy. Or you could just simply make up a lie saying like, oh, they got food poisoning, that's that. And they were like, oh dang, that really sucks. And I was like, yeah, it does, but like we already had paid for it, and I didn't want to lose my money, so it really is on them. And they were even like, wow, congrats to you for coming to this little boat, this island tour by yourself. But the whole time I was like in Colombia by myself. So, but you know, they believed me, and you don't owe anyone the truth. Like, what you owe yourself is safety. So yeah, I would definitely recommend having a story in mind. And also, one of the things that I really wish I learned before solo or taking these trips was that if you should check with your bank that you could actually take money out or like exchange money in the currency that whatever country you're going to. And this also saves you money on like fees or any transfer fees you might have whenever you're taking money out in the country that you're going to. I definitely recommend that. I will say go maybe like a week before, because I think it takes like 2 to 3 days for you to get the money if that bank doesn't have it. But yeah, I will say I'm gonna do that for my next trip whenever I go. I think that you should take whenever you go on your trip is take a good book. If you don't like reading, take a small book or something. Just take a book to read. I feel like having a good book to read is so great because you don't have to be on your phone all the time. And I personally like felt like tired just traveling some days, and it just felt nice to kind of like escape into a world. I remember I would be in multiple coffee shops, like in Lake Atitlan. There was a huge couch and I ordered like a coffee, and I got to see like the beautiful view of the lake, and I was just sitting reading my book and no one was bothering me, and it's so much better than just scrolling on your phone. So I definitely recommend taking a book whenever you go to your trip. You don't have to do this, but this is the advice that I take and I apply whenever I'm traveling, is that I want to go to a country that I could speak that language. If you only speak English, then you should probably go to a place that probably speaks English, or majorly like stay in that area. Or if you don't speak that language, like say you're going to Mexico and you don't speak Spanish, then put some effort into learning a couple words from that country. I think that would be helpful, or at least write some phrases down. But for me, I am Mexican American. My first language is Spanish, and I had to learn English like as a, I believe, 6-year-old pretty quickly. And I will say my Spanish is kind of choppy, but I am able to get my way around, and I was definitely able to talk to the locals, talk to people in Spanish, and figure my way around. And there'd be times where I'd be the translator. So yeah, and I think that really helped me a lot. Especially it helped calm me with the nerves. It helped calm the nerves because I knew that I was able to communicate for at least, because if I were to take my first solo trip as a person who only speaks English and Spanish to, let's say, Japan or Thailand, yes, Thailand, I would definitely be freaking out. I've been told by some people that have gone to Thailand that are like only English speakers, that they said that it's very it's very common for people to speak English. But in my mind, it's like, oh my god, like I would be freaking out, and it's so far. As a solo traveler, I feel that you really get the best you get the most benefits from staying in hostels, because A, they're very non-expensive, B, it's very much of a social area. Like you will meet so many solo travelers whenever you stay in a hostel, and C, they have so many events happening, and they're definitely the type of their hostels definitely have a it's very common to go to hostels, and they have like things that you could do, whether the hostel hosts them. Say for like one of the hostels that I stayed at, they hosted like a wine and cheese night, and most of the time it's free. Or they have dinners that you could do, like family dinners, or games that you could play. And also like they have things that you could do of buying like a bracelet, and you get to go night or clubbing with the people that are staying in your hostel, and you get to meet people through that. And also you get to have fun too, and not feel like you're the only one, because those people are also visiting, so know that you're with those people, not just like by yourself whenever you go clubbing. But yeah, so they have a lot of events, and it's really great to social. It's a great place to meet a lot of people. Yeah, hostels are not that expensive. They're very non-expensive, and the options range from like staying in a 4-dorm bedroom, or like up to like 12 or 6. And there's some hostels have like females only options, or mixed dorms. It's kind of like a college dorm setting. Like think about whenever you'd be a freshman in college, you're sharing a dorm. They're usually bunk beds. I feel like I've had a really great experiences with hostels. I will say if you're more on the side of like you want more cleaner hostels and you don't want really dirtier hostels, thankfully my experience, like I haven't had like really shitty dirty hostels. They do keep it up to date and like very clean. I will say like look into boutique hostels or hostels that are like cohort, I believe that's the word, or hostels that are, yeah, like very like a chain hostel. Like there's like Selena, and those are very popular. They're like all around the world. Like in Chicago they have a Selena, in Colombia I stayed in Selena, and they're really great. They're more popular and it's more secure. The app that I used was Hostelworld, and I really like that app because you get to book your stay, and make sure with Hostelworld like you pay a certain fee at first, but you have to pay the rest of it when you get there, whether it's like through the current currency or the local currency or through your card. I feel like I really liked Hostelworld because you get to see like photos of the hostel, you get to see reviews, and also get put into chats of people who are staying in that area, like in that country, and also in that hostel as well. So you could potentially meet up with people and make friends. And yeah, and honestly hostels like they have a lot of different events, like live music parties. Like some hostels host those parties, but I really like some hostels are very more of like people who more quiet and non-social, and it's like the opposite for some hostels, because some hostels like they're more catered towards people who are like digital nomads or people that are traveling while working or remotely work. So it's they have spaces like meeting rooms, places where quiet places or libraries. But I will say it's the best thing you should do when solo traveling, and I definitely recommend that. So yeah, and through hostels I met really great people, amazing people. I made a lot of friends through hostels, and they have such an amazing events. Like I remember one of the hostels that I stayed at in Colombia, one of the cool events that I didn't get to go was they had a football match, and I thought that would have been so cool, but I had to leave that day, so I was like, dang, I really can't go. And it's very like non-expensive, some of the things that they have like are events, and it even tells you like hostels tell you things to do. Like for Guatemala, one of them was like, oh, like we offer you rides to go to this like hiking tour, or like if you wanna, in Guatemala it's very common for people to visit Guatemala and stay in Lake Atitlan and Antigua, and they have like shuttles they can connect you with so you can make that commute, and I think that's very great too. So definitely like 5 stars for hostels. Like I'd recommend staying in hostels, and if anyone watching this video has stayed in hostels, leave a comment about your experience or things that you recommend, or also if you have more questions that you feel like I didn't cover about hostels, like please let me know in the comment section and I'm happy to answer them.